hopping on to learn about the new line at Capital, Listen Technologies. We're actually joined today with Sam Nord from Listen Technologies and also Tim Von Bargen, which is the our sales rep at Capital as well that does Listen Technologies. So I just want to thank both of them for hopping on. And without further ado, I'm actually going to flip it over to Sam. Sam, are you there?
I am here.
Perfect. I'm going to flip it over to you here. Give me 1 second. We can see your screen, Sam. Do you want to hit the show my screen and we can see you?
Can you all see my screen now?
We can.
Perfect. Let's get started. So thanks again for having me this morning. I really appreciate it. I'm Sam Nord, the Director of Sales with Listen Technologies, and really excited to have Capital on board as our distributor in the Midwest there. And we'll just get started. So just a little bit about Listen generally. We are been around since 1998, headquartered in Bluffdale, Utah, right outside of Salt Lake City. And this is kind of our listing of our leadership team. The lady on the fourth over there, that's my boss. And this just kind of gives you a little idea of kind of some of the accomplishments and some of the highlights of our history since being founded in 1998. We've been very fortunate to have a number of exciting product developments and milestones over that time. Our products, which today we're going to specifically focus on our infrared, FM, and Wi-Fi products, and we found that along with some of our other products that we'll maybe focus on at another time, really encompass a very wide array of vertical markets that you can see here. And here's just a small sampling of some of the clientele that use Listen Technologies on a regular basis. And here too, we can kind of see where our products actually fit into, how they fit into various locations throughout the country, and what solutions they've used. So we found that, and we'll get into this a little deeper in a bit, but for example, we find that our FM systems are used at almost any major NFL or college football stadium throughout the country, and with a Wi-Fi product that I'll be talking about shortly, we have a really nice installation that anyone is welcome to. Best demo you could ever have if you happen to be in Vegas. We are at the Las Vegas Caesars Palace Races Sportsbook, so it's kind of a fun installation story to tell. And I'm just going to go ahead and get started on the actual product portion with our Listen Wi-Fi product. Listen Wi-Fi is a product that is really aimed around the idea that mobile technology, cell phones, iPads, etc., have gotten so ubiquitous that there's a lot of demand for being able to pull audio to your phone in various applications. And the way our system works is the real essence here is really on simplicity, where from the end user's point of view, all you should have to do is download an app, which we've created, connect to a network, pick a channel of audio that you want to listen to, and really that should be the limitation. It should be very simple to get going right away. This is what the user interface looks like on a system like this. And this is, again, to give you an idea, this is something where, now we'll look at a couple applications in a bit, but anywhere where you have, say, a video wall or just a whole bank of TV monitors or even, say, a language interpretation system, you can use your phone to pull the various audio sources and use your own device to listen to all those various sources. So this is what the interface is going to look like to an end user We have a couple different configurations that you can use here, as you can see. The essence, again, is really just on simplicity, having it very intuitive and easy to use. This is really kind of gives you a concept of all an end user really needs to do to get up and running on the system like this. Again, all you do is look for our network that's part of our system. We'll get to the hardware in a little bit, but this is really what the interface is going to look like to the client. And then they should, once they've logged onto our system and opened our app, which is, again, Listen Wi-Fi, they can go ahead and pick a channel and they can listen to it. And, you know, I think anyone who's used, and it's, I should mention, it's, doesn't care if you're using an Android device or an iDevice, it works either way. And really anyone who's ever listened to a podcast or listened to music on their device, it's the controls are going to be very similar. So we've really kind of made it so that it should be something that there really is no learning curve. You should be able to really get it right away. We try to make it as uncomplicated as possible. And as you can see in that right picture right there, one thing that we've done as well is make it so you can actually customize this. So for example, as you saw in one of the earlier slides, we have this product at the race and sportsbook at Caesar's Palace, where people go to, you know, bet on sports and watch various sporting events. As much as I would love it if every phone that popped up to our and joined our system there displayed our logo, obviously that's not necessarily what the end user wants. So of course, when you open the app there, what pops up is something that says Caesar's Palace. So we're able to do that sort of customization for the end user. Very easy just to bring a JPEG into the system so that it can do some personal branding for the venue that it's located in. What's really unique about this product is, I mean, I could spend this all my time really kind of going over the various applications, but we found that, you know, just some small examples of where these go in. You know, obviously the low-hanging fruit here is going to be fitness centers, sports bars, restaurants, those type of applications where there's a tendency to have a lot of television sets and not a real simple way of actually listening to them. I'm sure we've all had the experience of being in a restaurant or sports bar where you have a bunch of TVs that are essentially sitting on mute, and it's very hard to engage with them because you can't hear anything. Well, this is a solution to that issue. And we've also found on fitness centers that it works really well for the similar reason. There's a tendency to have 3.5 jacks at each piece of cardio equipment, which, you know, at least in my experience, if 50% of them are working at any given time, that tends to be a lucky day. A really big application we found for this product has been at the university level, student recreation areas, student gathering areas, anywhere where lots of students gather, and they're, again, either via video wall or just a whole bank of TVs. And of course, once you have more than one TV, you can't play the audio from all of them, so it becomes sort of decorative, a big video investment that's primarily decorative. Whereas this product gives you the ability to really use, you know, get more ROI out of that investment, because you can actually hear all the various audio sources in the space. And we found the same thing in corporate applications. And, you know, we've even found many applications for this product where it's not even necessarily a video-centric application. We've had many applications now that people have been using this for language interpretation, again, based on the ubiquity of cell phones and the idea that pretty much anyone has this on their person. So if you have an event that requires multiple languages of simultaneous interpretation, it's very easy to use your own device to pick, you know, I want to listen to the Spanish feed or the French feed or whatever the various languages that might be offered. And there's other applications for this. Again, I could spend this whole time just really going over that. And some of those, for example, would be being able to put audio behind a digital signage system. We found that this has become really popular in multi-dwelling units, you know, apartment complexes, condo complexes that have fitness centers, where this just, again, becomes a real nice way for people to be able to take advantage of the video that's in those spaces. Instead of just staring blankly at a screen, it gives you the ability to actually partake of the audio. So what makes it work? What do you actually what would you actually be purchasing? Well, this kind of gives you an idea of what the hardware behind the system is. It's a server along with a audio interface, and we actually provide a WAP as well. So we have a closed network. So it really is sort of a plug-and-play system. One thing that's unique about this is it's very modular. So in other words, we can go anywhere from basic 8-channel system, and frankly, we can go all the way up to 48 channels. So you only really have to buy as big of a system as is required for the application. It's definitely not a one-size-fits-all. We can kind of be as big or small as you need. This kind of gives you an idea of technically how this product works, where essentially there's going to be an audio or video source. Again, this could be microphones if you're doing this for language interpretation. This could be your cable boxes, you know, in the typical scenario where we're connecting this to a video wall or just a bank of TVs. All those are going to plug into our audio interface, depending on the number of units, depending on the number of connections. That's going to tie into our main server. The audio interface plugs into there. We have a PoE injector, so that goes out to the WAP that we provide, and obviously that's going to broadcast the Wi-Fi that's going to connect either the Android or the iDevices. So very simple process that we provide all the hardware for, again, to make it very easy and plug and play. As I mentioned, what's really nice about this is that it's very scalable. So we can do a real basic system if you just have a small, a small venue that, only has, say, 2 or 3 TVs. At the same time, we can make this really scalable. So if you wanted to put this in a whole wing of a college building, if one wanted to do multiple floors of a corporate building, we're able to do that as well. So we can really, again, it's sort of no project too big or small application. This kind of gives you an idea of how we're able to scale the product, where, again, a typical system is just going to come with one wireless access point, but we, with a switch and a controller, can actually do up to 10 access points. So, and you can see there, it'll just connect to the same system, just we're just going to add those additional access points. So this kind of gives you an idea how that would work. The same essential concept, we're just adding the switch and the controller and more access points to give a larger coverage area and also to accommodate more users. So the same essential concept of how it works is going to remain the same. We're just adding in some additional hardware to make it work in that larger way. So when you're deciding on a system, when you're looking at an application for this just kind of gives you some idea of what to consider. I mentioned that Caesar's Palace application earlier. In that application, the big issue, some of it was size, because it is a pretty big area, so one WAP would probably not cover the full area they want to cover. But the bigger concern was usage. As you probably saw in the previous slide, one WAP, depending on how many channels you're using, can generally cover about 60 to 100 simultaneous users. And there, the big issue was, depending on the event, depending what's going on, theoretically, they could have hundreds and hundreds of users. So they wanted to make sure that we could accommodate all those. So they went with a multiple WAP system, just so that they could have literally hundreds of users simultaneously. We do provide an internet pass-through on our system, so even though we have a closed system where we use our own WAP, we're still able to tie into the venue's WAP so that people can still do the things that they like to do on the internet. They could check Facebook, check their emails. They don't lose that connectivity. As mentioned, we're scalable. We can literally have up to 1,000 users depending on the application. You can choose on that audio interface if you would like the channels to be broadcast in mono or stereo, which again gives us the ability to bring this up to 48 channels, and as few as 4. So again, very modular. We have never had any sort of fee structure for this product. It is one of those products where you buy the hardware, it's a one-time purchase. So there's no annual fees, there's no software fees, even though we're constantly upgrading the software as Androids and iPhones change. That is always going to be done free of charge. It's not the kind of thing that you're ever going to have to pay anything additional for. So if you can get them to agree the initial purchase, you're not having to convince them to, pay some outrageous monthly or yearly fee either. And that is pretty much it as far as the Wi-Fi product. We'll take questions, I guess, at the end of this. So I'm going to move now to our other products, which are the FM and IR assisted listening products. So essential question is, why do you need assisted listening in the first place? And the fact is, and I'm going to, because of the limitations of time, I mean, I have whole hour-long presentations really just on the ADA and how it relates to assisted listening. But just to kind of give you a very brief version, the ADA essentially says that in venues where audible communication is essentially the use of a space, assisted listening products need to be provided. Even courthouses are interesting. They say even if there's no audio equipment, they still require assisted listening devices. Although with most venues, what I tend to tell people is if you're installing any sort of speaker system into a space, you can pretty well be assured that the likelihood of requiring assisted listening is pretty high. The exceptions to that tend to be if it's background music, then you don't need to provide assisted listening for that, or paging. Other than that, again, if it's essential communication, assisted listening tends to be required by the ADA. We offer a couple different types of assisted listening systems. Again, today we're going to focus on the FM and the IR, kind of go over the differences, why you do use one over another, and come into some of the specifics about our particular line. This right here kind of gives you an idea of what the ADA says is required. So as you can see, I mean, even if there's no fixed seating in the space, there's still a requirement to have some assisted listening. And I guess if you get nothing else out of this meeting, I should say, don't bother memorizing this chart or anything like that. One thing that we've done to try to make it easy, on our website, we actually have a calculator where if you could type in, say, I have a venue that seats 500 people, and it'll shoot back at you exactly how many receivers are required and how many neck loops are required. And we actually have an app for that as well called the Listen ADA Calculator, which is available for either an Android or an iDevice, where, again, the same concept. You input how many seats are in a space, and it'll shoot back out at you the number of devices that would be required to be compliant with ADA. So I'm going to start out discussing the FM side, the radio frequency side. This is our most common system that we sell. It really works just like the, an FM radio that's, right in your car, where we are given a couple of frequencies that we can use for assisted listening, which is 72 and 216. And we have channels within those ranges that you log into, just like you'd log into a radio station. You could really use an unlimited number of receivers on that. The advantages of FM is it tends to be the easiest to use. You can use it indoors and out. It has the furthest distance. I mentioned earlier that we tend to be in almost any major sporting stadium, football stadiums, college stadiums, because we can literally go up to 3,000 feet with one antenna. So it tends to be the simplest to use if you have a requirement of that sort. Tends to be the lowest price, although we'll go into some less expensive IR products in a little bit. To kind of know when you'd use FM versus IR, the two things that would prevent you from using an FM system that might get you looking at IR, it's not secure, as noted on this slide. So in other words, like an FM system, you can't really limit it. It's it can go through walls, it can travel outside of a building. So if you do have any privacy or security requirements, FM is probably not the technology you'd use. If you don't really care, then FM is fine. The other thing to think about is, just like with wireless microphones, there's a finite number of channels that we can use within close proximity to one another on FM, where if we exceed that, you'll start to get some crosstalk, and that tends to be about 6 to 8 simultaneous channels. So because of those changes to the ADA, if you're doing things like, say a university where you have to do a lot of classrooms and close proximity to one another. That would be an example where IR would probably be a better choice, because we could do it at a limited number of rooms in close proximity without having those issues. So essentially, this is how an FM system works. We have a transmitter, which is just going to connect to the primary audio source in the room, usually a mixer of some sort. And that's just going to, you know, with it connected to an antenna, and that's just going to broadcast to our receivers. It's pretty simple. We are unique at Listen in that we offer 2 channels that we can use for assisted listening, 72 megahertz, and we also offer 216 megahertz. I believe we are the only company that offers 216. And the question is, you know, when would you use one over another? Well, 72 megahertz, nice thing about it is, again, we can do a pretty good number of channels in close proximity, about 6 to 8. The limitation is we can only go about 1,000 to 1,200 feet with the 72 megahertz system. So for small to medium-sized venues, and again, particularly if you have to do a lot of rooms in close proximity, 72 megahertz works great. 216, the one negative is that we can do fewer channels in close proximity before we start getting crosstalk. We can only do about 3. The advantage is with 216 is that's where we can really cover a very large area, like up to 3,000 feet. So you'll find that in most major, again, when we talk about the football stadiums and those type of venues, they are almost inevitably using our 216 system. To give you one recent example, US Bank Stadium, when they opened that last year, they went with the Listen 216 system, again, because one system can cover the whole football stadium with one antenna. The biggest thing I wanted to cover today as far as FM goes, and this will be covered in IR as well, is what Listen has done with receivers. I'm not sure how familiar anyone on this call is with assisted listening receivers, but the tendency has always been for them to be very large and bulky devices. They almost resembled, say, a wireless microphone body pack. So even though we know that the number of people who require assisted listening devices is about 17% of the population, because it's an invisible disability, because there is a little bit of a vanity aspect to it, people don't necessarily want to wear a device that draws a lot of attention to them, that, you know, a big device that advertises to the world that they have issues with their hearing. So a couple of years ago, we came out with what we call our IDSP receivers, which stands for Intelligent Digital Signal Processing. And as you can see here, this is a very small device. It's actually, gives you an idea here. This is how it looks like next to a typical cell phone. So this is about, I would say, about half to a third of the size of a typical assisted listening receiver. Very small, very sleek. It lets you be, you can, number one, you can sort of hide it easily, and if you are wearing it, it's a lot less conspicuous than a typical ALS system. When we came out with this, we wanted to analyze where the pain points were, what some of the drawbacks were with typical assisted listening devices. And one thing that was immediately evident is with a lot of assisted listening systems, just like with a wireless microphone, these are all based on channels. You know, you're going to set your assisted listening system on, say, channel E. Well, when you think about the user experience and who the primary customers of these might be, it could get confusing if you're at a church and you hand someone a device and say, well, you know, make sure your assisted listening device is set to channel A. You're going to lose a lot of people, whereas with our system, we can actually name our channel. So we can actually call it Sanctuary or Classroom A, or if we're using this for language interpretation, we could say Spanish. So just something that makes it something that's going to be more meaningful for the end user. We actually we offer 2 devices, an LR 4200 and 5200. With the 5200, we give you a button in front of the unit that lets you change channels very easily. So if you need to go from one channel to another, it's very simple, and we can actually program these on that unit as well. So say you're offering 3 channels to a facility, we can lock out all additional channels, so when you hand this to somebody, the only channels that show up are those 3 that are being offered. So you have a lot of flexibility. Another pain point and this is one that we heard from venues a lot, you know, not so much on the dealer side, but on the venue side. Typically, assisted listening devices have always taken AA or AAA batteries, so I'm sure anyone could imagine the pain point there. Trying to manage a stock of batteries could be very challenging, even if you were using rechargeable AA's, because those obviously don't last forever. So we thought, let's get rid of that. It's a pain point. Let's use the same battery for our product that you use in your cell phone, so that you're going to think about replacing your batteries about as frequently as you think about replacing the battery on your cell phone. This gives you 8 hours of battery life, only takes about 2.5 hours to charge. And again, I mean, this is going to depend somewhat on usage, but you could theoretically get 5 to 10 years out of the system before you're looking at changing the battery. Another big change, and unless you are a hearing aid wearer, this might be a little bit difficult to conceptualize, but from a user experience, this was one of the absolute most important changes that we made with this system, was with our neck loop lanyard. The kind of dirty secret about neck loops, and for those who aren't familiar with the concept, a neck loop does essentially, when you wear a neck loop, if you have a particular type of hearing aid with what they call a telecoil inside of it, it allows the audio feed to get sent direct to your hearing aid rather than having to wear headphones, because obviously if you wear a hearing aid, putting headphones over that doesn't always make the most sense. And part of the ADA requirement is that 25% of all your receivers need to have this function. And kind of the dirty secret of our industry for years is these neck loops have never worked that well, because the tendency was to use a very thin headphone wire, and they just didn't drive enough volume to people's hearing aids in the past to really make it a usable, pleasurable experience. So we really improved the technology on our neck loop, using a thicker gauge of wire, using a built-in hearing loop driver in our system, which you can see on the unit itself, so that if you are wearing this and you have a style of hearing aid, it really is no different than going into a room that actually has been physically looped, which is another technology that we're not going into today. But just know that that's been a vastly improved technology. Another thing unique to Listen, our receivers are 20 dB less background noise than any of our competitors. So from a user perspective, what that's going to mean is you're getting less hits, you're getting more signal, less noise, so the sound clarity. And obviously, if you have hearing loss, that's going to be vitally important that you're not having any hiss that's interfering with the transmission. We also offer software. This is free software that comes with our IDSP systems. There's a lot of functionality here. In the interest of time, I won't go through all of it, but this really helps the venue, just in the sense when you hand one of these units out, this allows you to, as you can sort of see on the right here, lets the venue know who has it, how long they have it for. You can kind of take a look at your inventory, see which units are in, which units are out. When you see a unit is out, you can actually see who has it, so you can see about getting it back. I showed that channel naming ability earlier. This is the mechanism that you'd use to put those channel names within the system. So again, it's just something to give the venue a lot more flexibility and usability of the system, make their life easier as they manage their stock. We have a couple of different ways to charge these units. We have a charging case, a charging tray. As you can see here, a lot of venues are required that you give some sort of collateral to use an assisted listening device. So we actually put a space to put a credit card or a driver's license in there. And because these are using a cell phone style battery, you can also charge these just with a typical mini USB. So I'm going to switch now to a different technology. We're going to move to the infrared systems. We have two types of infrared systems available. Number one is our all-in-one unit, which will have a transmitter and radiator all-in-one system. Then we also have component systems where you're going to have a separate transmitter and a separate radiator. So those are just two options that you have. Traditionally, what you see here, I debated whether to leave the slide in, but I wanted you to see it. This is traditionally what assisted listening devices for infrared used. And I don't know about you, but I probably wouldn't be caught dead in the in the, for example, in that one that you see on the top there. You know, it's not very attractive. It draws a lot of attention to yourself. So when we changed the receivers for our FM side, we decided to do that for our IR side as well. And if you look at these, you'll note they more or less look the same, but they're actually quite different because these are all made out of IR transparent plastic. And what that means is our IR receivers are actually improving the coverage of a typical IR system. I almost hate to admit this, but using our infrared receivers will actually improve the performance of a competitor's IR system just because the coverage is so good by using the IR transparent plastic. This kind of gives you an idea of how that works. You can sort of see in this video here, when you turn on the IR camera, again, this is all IR transparent plastic. So unlike a typical IR receiver, which is based on an IR eye, which can be easily covered or blocked, our whole unit is essentially working as one giant IR eye. So unless that complete plastic is 100% covered, you're going to get coverage. So this is a comment we hear a lot, is people tend to think that we're gaming the system because the things that you typically couldn't do with IRs tend to have a little bit of a bad reputation just because the coverage has always been very sensitive. If you turn your body the wrong way, you turn around, all of a sudden your whole signal gets lost. Whereas with our system, I mean, you could literally put these in your shirt pocket sometimes and have the system work fine and still get complete coverage. I'm going to kind of go over when you'd use one over another, you know, the reasons why. This is our LT84. This is a system we came out with a couple of years ago. Again, this is one where your IR emitter and your transmitter are all on one unit. So the transmitter sending out the light signal, or the emitter sending out the light signal, and all your connections are plugging into the transmitter. We actually have some expansion radiators on this one, so if you do need additional coverage or if there's anything blocking your line of sight, we can actually attach up to 4 additional emitters to this unit. This is a combination unit, very inexpensive, that it was really kind of made for small to medium-sized venues. Again, I mentioned the places where you tend to use IR are places where privacy and security are required, or we have a lot of rooms in close proximity. So we find that on universities, these tend to be a really nice option because one of these units can cover about, used with our new receivers, can cover about 30,000 square feet. So we can use one unit and cover a whole classroom, or for example, a courtroom. If you're doing any sort of court work, one unit can cover that whole space at a very inexpensive price with really good coverage. The whole unit is also made out of IR transparent plastic. We have 10 wide angle emitters in there and 10 that are very directional. So again, our unit works to get extremely good coverage all throughout a room. This kind of gives you an idea of what the connectivity is in the back. The one thing I really do want to point out is that our unit offers 4 channels of infrared. Why is that important? Well, to give you one example, I visited a client in Washington, a very big software company that I'm sure you all have heard of. They wanted to use IR because they had privacy concerns at their meetings. They wanted to make sure they were meeting all the ADA, but they also wanted to make sure that no one could listen in on their meetings, so they went with an IR system. As soon as I turned on this system, the projector in their room turned on because we were using the same IR channel. Where with our system, because we do offer the 4 unique channels right on the unit, we can actually change the channel right away if that happens, so it just becomes a non-issue, whereas with some other systems, all of a sudden you'd have to get an RA and try to get one with a different frequency. We have 2 channels on this one, so say courthouses really tend to like this because if you need to do 1 channel ALS or 1 channel of, say, language translation, we can do that using one system. And we have a couple different input options on both sides of both channels. Here's really the big thing that I'd like to get across, again, is just how good the coverage is. This gives you an idea here. As I mentioned, with our unit and our receivers, we can cover about 30,000 square feet. So on the left is our system. This is just using ease data. You can sort of see the black areas on our competitor systems are where they get dead zone. So it tends to be very directional. So the last thing we want to do is, based on accommodation, say you're using this at a university classroom, the last thing you ever want to do is tell people, well, if you're using assisted listening, you have to sit in this bank of seats, otherwise we can't guarantee it works. Whereas with ours, we can really tell people you can be anywhere in the room. You don't have to sit in a specific space, and you'll still get really good coverage. This kind of gives you an idea of what the unit comes with. It's really a complete system. It comes with pretty much everything you need, all the mounting material, all your cabling, and your signage. Real quick, I just want to go over our larger system as well. We have a transmitter. This is where you'll use a secondary emitter, a separate system where it's not all in one unit. This just tends to be used in larger venues, big performing arts venues, where you're going to need to use many emitters. To give you one example, we recently did a big performing arts venue that had multiple balconies. For those type of really large venues, this separate system is going to be ideal with the where you can use as many emitters as you need to make the system work. So again, anything kind of small to medium size, the all-in-one system should work fine. If you're doing a really large system, again, theater style performing arts venue, this separate system is probably going to be more ideal. Here you have, again, we can do 4 channels just using 4 separate transmitters, and then we can connect to as many emitters as are required. So this just gives you kind of some idea of how that separate emitter works and then what they look like. And the big thing to just know is with our IR systems, you shouldn't have dead spots. We can cover a really large area, and it should really just change the perception about IR. You don't have to worry that it's not going to work. We've really changed how that whole mindset should work. And that is it for me. Apologize if I went a little long. Any questions?
Thanks, Sam, for hopping on. Guys, if you guys had any questions, feel free to post them in the questions box. We'll take as much time as we need to answer all of your guys' questions. And I know how it goes. As soon as we end the webinar, that's when your questions pop up. If you do have any questions after we get off the webinar, please don't hesitate to reach out to myself, your local account manager at Capital Sales, or Listen Technologies. We're all here to help you guys make sure you have the right, answer your questions, help with any designs, any projects you may be interested in using this in. Again, guys, thanks again for hopping on. We'll give it a few minutes, and please post any questions in the questions box. Well, Sam, I don't see any questions rolling in, so that means you must have done an amazing job. Oh, hold on, we do have a question. Here they come rolling in.
Gotcha.
So first question is, I have a question on another Listen product. I'm using the Listen RFS system to shoot a signal from one building, I'm guessing, to another. You didn't finish that. What's the question there? Paul, can you rephrase that or finish that? While I'm waiting for rephrase it, we'll go to the next question here. How does the self-branding work?
Okay, now I'm assuming that that's referring to our Wi-Fi system. That's really easy. The Wi-Fi system comes with a login. Listen, well, there's a couple ways to do it. Let me step back a second. On the integrator side, you have an IP address that has a number of controls that you can use. But on the end user side, we give them a login at listenwifi.com. That's where you can go in and name your channels, if you want to call them NBC, ESPN, etc. But what that also does, there's a place for you to just bring in a JPEG of, whatever, however you want whatever logo you'd like to pop up when the system comes on. And that's really it. It's that simple. I mean, it takes you about 5 minutes. That really more like 1 minute. It's literally just bringing a JPEG into the system.
All right, and now back. Hopefully that answered the question. Back to Paul's question. He's using the RF system to shoot one signal to another building. How far should he expect using external antennas on the IR100?
Oh, actually, we're talking about our LR100. That's a very unique product that's a very unique product that we have. It's made specifically, really to go long distances. So if you are working on, say, a football stadium, like a high school football stadium, gets used a lot if you need to connect to speakers on the, say, visitor side. You don't want to have to go and, trench underneath the field. So with that system, it works just like our FM system. Depending what frequency you're using, we can go anywhere from 1,200 to 3,000 feet, depending if you're using our 72 or 216 system.
Okay, so if he's using 216, what's the what is the range?
With 216, we can go up to 3,000 feet.
And then it was 1,500 with the 72?
It used to be the FCC actually recently lowered the transmission range of 72 megahertz, and now that's moved down to about 1,000. It used to be 1,500, now it's closer to about 1,000 to 1,200.
Okay. And is there any frequency response? How wide is the frequency response is it able to broadcast high quality music, from the full frequency range, or is it only a certain frequency range?
I've never had an issue. Yeah, it's high quality audio. That's why we've kind of made it a self-contained system. We know that the audio quality is important. So yeah, it should be.
Great. Okay. Next question: do we install it on the server ourselves? Brandon, what are you talking about? Are you talking self-branding? And if so, hopefully we answer that question. If not, please repost. So we'll move to the next one here. What are the relative cost differences among various technologies? E.g., how much are the single WAP systems for Listen Wi-Fi?
Oh, that's a great question. So it's for the Listen Wi-Fi. Is that what you asked about?
Considering he's mentioning the
single WAP. Yeah, the Listen Wi-Fi. So on Listen Wi-Fi, just to give you like an MSRP idea, for an 8-channel system, MSRP is $25.99 for like an 8-channel system with 1 WAP, and it just really goes up. We have either kind of 4 stereo / 8 mono channel system. It goes from there to a 12 stereo / 24 mono, and then 24 mono / 48. I'm sorry, 24 stereo / 48 mono. So you have those 3 options, and neither of those go up all that much from one another. The biggest thing that's really going to affect the price of a Wi-Fi system is more if it's the need to use the multiple WAPs. That's really the biggest thing that's going to affect the price is, how many users and how big of a space you need to cover.
Great. Well, guys, do you have any other questions? I don't see any rolling in. We must have answered the questions that were out there. Sam, again, I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy day to go over all the products. Thank you for going over them thoroughly, being able to answer all the questions that we have. Guys, if you guys have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to myself, the account managers at Capital, Listen Technologies. Again, we would be happy to answer any questions, talk about any projects you have, or the questions on will this work, or what should I use. I know there's a lot of different options for products, so again, I want to thank you guys for hopping on and taking time out of your busy days as well. So thanks, Sam, and thanks everyone. I hope you guys all have a great week.
My pleasure. Thanks so much, guys.